The team that was in the D.C. area drafted him. He wins Rookie of the Year over Andrew Luck. Now, remember, the team that was in the D.C. area traded everything to get RG3. Once Andrew Luck goes to the Colts, which I think everybody knew, RG3 was going to be the next guy highly sought after. Nobody wanted him more than the football team that was in D.C. It doesn't end up working out because of injuries, I think, that take place. He had a hot start. It ends up not working. Him and Jay Gruden, I don't think, saw eye to eye.
Nope.
At the time or now. But he came out and said something very interesting about what Caleb should do as a guy who got drafted at the top of a draft and has been in an NFL building and understands seemingly how the NFL works.
Caleb Williams should pull a Eli Manning and demand that the Chicago Bears do not draft him number 1 overall. After everything that's happened with Justin Fields, can Caleb Williams really look at that and say, you know what? This is the organization that has my best interests at heart, and they're going to help develop me into the player that I want to become. Caleb Williams is on record saying that he wants to be legendary. He wants to rewrite history, and he wants to be the best that he can possibly be and win the most games he can possibly win. After the Bears took Justin Fields, the 11th pick in the draft, and turned him into a 6th round pick in the 2025 draft by trading him to the Pittsburgh Steelers, can Caleb Williams really look at that and say, you know what? Yeah, this organization is going to help get me where I want to go. Yeah. I don't think it's saying that. Eli Manning had power in that 2004 draft. And he let the Chargers know, don't draft me. I don't believe in the direction that your organization is going, and I don't want to play there. He refused to play for them, even threatened to sit out an entire season if they drafted him. And they still drafted him. And the look on his face when he's holding up the jersey said everything. So what happened?
Eli.
The Chargers traded him to the New York Giants for
Right.
Phillip Rivers, also a 2004 third-round pick, and then the 1st and 5th round picks in the 2005 NFL draft. What did Eli end up doing? He won 2 Super Bowls for the New York Giants. Had a great career.
Good point.
For Caleb Williams, don't get me wrong, guys. I thought Ryan Poles was having an amazing offseason up until this trade for Justin Fields. Because you trade Justin Fields so you can get some players back to help your team out this year. Because Ryan Poles and Matt Eberflus, the head coach of the Chicago Bears, they're in a lame duck season. They have to win this year or they're going to get fired. And don't get me wrong. Hey, hand the football off to DeAndre Swift, throwing the ball to Keenan Allen and DJ Moore and Cole Kmet. Those guys are phenomenal. This ain't anything about them. This is about Caleb Williams and what team out there gives him the best chance to be successful. Only he can deem that. Yes, I do think him going back to Washington, where he's from, he's a D.C. kid, went to Gonzaga College High School. Okay? I think that's the best spot right now. But he has to answer that question. And if he says, all right, I see everything that's been going on, and now I can make the decision and say, I don't think that the Chicago Bears are the best place for me or my family to accomplish all the goals that we want to accomplish, then he needs to let that be known. He does have power right now, and he should exercise it if he feels like Chicago is not where he should be.
Okay. All right, RG3. I appreciate that. There was conversations a couple years back about Joe Burrow maybe doing this in Cincinnati.
That's right.
Because Cincinnati's still being voted not that great of a facility, not that great of an operation. That entire thing when it comes to the NFLPA report card. But they got new ownership, new run, new camp, new everything. So they feel like they're a brand new building, and they should be proud. Hey, let's go, Bengals.
Turn it around.
They should be very proud to turn that whole thing around. I assume the Bears are thinking the same thing.
Yeah.
We got new GM, new president, new coach, new culture. We're getting new players in here. So you can't judge us off of what has happened, historically in the Chicago Bears for the last 20 years, which is you guys suck. Garbage. Trash bag.
Yep. Hot.
Garbage.
It's only up from here, though.
Real bad.
But it feels like, because it's been so bad over time, inevitably you would think the odds would say you hit on something.
Yes.
And it feels like Ryan Poles has a vision. Eberflus is a guy who helped with the entire vision, I would assume, because he's a culture setter. When he was here in Indianapolis, everybody loved him. Players loved him. His assistant coaches loved him. Head coach loved him. Irsay loved him. Literally, he was such a great defense coordinator here. He got a head coaching job in the time when they were only hiring offensive head coaches. So I think judging the Chicago Bears strictly off of what has happened over the last 20 years is a little bit rude. But with that being said, RG3 has a much better sense of what could potentially be great for a high draft pick and what cannot be, as opposed to us. But I would just saying the Washington Commanders are a franchise that'll be able to take care of them as opposed to the Bears. We all just wonder on what grounds.
Yeah.
On what grounds are you able to say that? I don't think any of us are 100% sure.
No, and obviously Dan Snyder's not there anymore, but what has this new ownership group proved in terms of they know how to be we don't know yet. Like they could. You obviously won't have nearly as much off the field stuff and like all that other bullshit that Dan Snyder kind of brought. But like we don't know if they're going to be any good. I mean, none of those guys have been in the NFL before, so it just and also like don't you think when you're getting drafted like Caleb Williams like. All these guys, and you can call it hubris or whatever you want, like he believes he can be the guy to turn the Bears around.
Well, if you're getting drafted at 1, you're probably going to a place that wasn't fantastic last year.
For sure.
This year, different though.
Yeah.
It's not even their number 1 overall pick. It's somebody else's number 1 overall pick. And at the end of the season, it was like they invested in the defense.
Yep. Yeah.
They invested in a running back now. They got weapons they've invested in.
Yep.
It's like that's a perfect place for a rookie quarterback to go, which is why I wonder if this was all just for him to say we need Caleb to be in Washington because his heart. Remember, he was going to buy to Washington with a GoFundMe.
That's right.
Remember that whole thing was going to happen.
Couple $100 million.
This is also the first time, too, the head coach and GM actually had their quarterback. Every single time the Bears have had a head coach, it was always from the previous head coach GM. So
which once again goes back to why RG3 was saying this place is stunk, which we,
So it's a new page.
Acknowledge.
we acknowledge.
Yes.
We acknowledge.
Of course. Always.
We acknowledge that that's the case. We also acknowledge our tribal chief who will be there on Friday in Iowa live, 2,500 people allowed. If we get 2,500 people there, that'll be very dumb. But we acknowledge that the Bears have stunk. Like, we acknowledge that. But it feels like with the new regime, things are maybe coming